Tomorrow will mark 1 year since Australians rejected the voice to Parliament. Honestly, where did that time go? I can't believe it's been a year in this case, but some have definitely not moved on. One of the main architects of the yes vote, Professor Megan Davis, has blamed Trumpian lies for the defeat of the referendum and says misinformation laws could prevent a similar outcome in a future referendum. Here she is speaking to the ABC's Insiders on Background podcast.
We were blindsided by quite a lot of misinformation, including in the official pamphlet. And I was on the committees that asked the government to pass an amendment to the legislation that allowed that pamphlet to be fact-checked, so that every single pamphlet going out to the Australian community wasn't full of political lies. But that didn't happen.
This is going to go on for the second anniversary, the third, the fourth. Holly, this is part of the problem with the misinformation laws, isn't it? If certain information doesn't suit a particular narrative, it just takes one person with an agenda to rule it as misinformation.
And this is the problem with the left now. Everything they don't like is misinformation. Everything they don't agree with is disinformation. Joe's scoffing here.
No,
but
it's
the
true.
fact that the yes people are still crying in their wheat bix over the fact that this was misinformation, people were misled. No, they weren't. No one has come out since the referendum and said, guess what? Buyer's remorse, we did the wrong thing. Few people are saying about Albanese they did the wrong thing when they voted and supported this Labor government. I haven't heard anyone come out and go, wow, we did the wrong thing, we were misled, we didn't have the full information. In fact, you still hear people say when things are coming up, God, imagine how much worse this would be if you think about the McPhillamys mine in outside of Blaney and all the interference that we're seeing there with not necessarily the official Indigenous groups. How much worse it would be if we had in the Constitution this voice. So these guys have got to move on. Get over it.
This is the perfect illustration. This right here is the perfect illustration why we shouldn't have this bill. This right here, like they've literally shot themselves in the foot.
Good advertisement.
They've flown the flag of why it's a bad. You know, whoever
maybe
controls.
We could get Megan to run that campaign because she did so well last go. It'd probably help out again this time.
You know, like whoever controls the media controls the narrative, and whoever controls the narrative controls the people. And it's interesting, like they're literally telling us right now, with trying to push for this, that they can curb democracy because it was a democratic vote. The people have spoken and they're like, how can we get around this? That's all it is it's another loophole where they want censorship to get their narrative. Because like I said, when the narrative is won, the people are won. So
it's extraordinary that you could actually take the disaster of the Voice referendum campaign and subsequent result, and then 1 year on, add another disaster to it.
So has Albo called Megan and asked her to come on board the comms team for the campaign? I think that's a great idea.
I like Megan Davis, but I'll tell you what they were blindsided by. They were blindsided by the fact that there was anyone out there who didn't already think exactly like them. They were blindsided by just normal people. And firstly, again, I don't want to have a crack at Megan Davis, but the idea that anyone could allow that thought to leave their lips and not understand what it would sound like. The idea that said, if only the government could use the law to control what
put the message we want out.
Was saying in a referendum, like just say that out loud and think that is a
and we wonder what's wrong with our universities.
So she's actually made, the misinformation laws sound like Mussolini, which is, again, an incredible own goal that I'm sure Albo will be thanking her for. But again, the idea that it was, it's like saying, it's like two things saying, it's like a footy team coming on the side saying, we would have won if the other side hadn't have kicked more goals than us, right?
Yeah,
and actually saying that with a straight face, or saying we would have won if the umpire hadn't have, if they hadn't got all those free kicks. Now, in sport, that is instantly recognised as the most pathetic, poor, sorry sportsmanship. And yet, this is being said with a straight face here. And I think it's because the actual scale of the disaster of the campaign, where you had more money than God, you had every major institution behind it, and they still managed to screw it up. And I was there watching it. I was hearing what was happening on the inside. I was looking at it. I was screaming into the void, even right up until with weeks to go. People say, oh, no, there's still heaps of undecided voters. It's going to be okay. And it was honestly like being gaslit by $400 million worth of funding. It was,
And it was $400 million of our own money,
It's
Gail,
also been
wasn't it?
suggested that there was a false equivalence by the ABC having to give equal time to the yes and no campaign. Now, just think about that for a minute.
The left complaining about the
that for the
ABC.
minute. Just think about that. So they are saying that it was ABC viewers who suddenly turned against the yes vote, and that was what nipped it in the bud. That was what stopped it getting over the line. When it was people in Western Sydney, the rich ABC viewers in the teal seats and the green seats, they voted for it in spades. The people who voted against it were the non-whites. They were the Western Sydney communities. They were the migrant communities, and they are the ones who, as it turns out, that the leaders of the Voice campaign were accusing of being racist if they didn't support.
I know,
Isn't it
that is the
extraordinary?
irony. I mean, there were plenty of white Australians. I want to bring Kellen here too, because, you know, Joe isn't the only person who advocated a yes vote who is now coming out and saying, well, actually, it wasn't just the no side. Our side was complicit in spreading its own disinformation.
Yeah, that's right. And people like Joe are now being honest about what went wrong. But I think it's worth looking at what she's saying and looking at the unexamined assumption underneath it. The unexamined assumption is Australians are stupid and are really easily fooled. It's a very anti-democratic view that's coming out it's not stated, it's just what she is assuming to be true. And I think that tells us what was going on in their camp when Joe wasn't getting them to listen to
But
what
we know
he said.
they think they're stupid.
They came out
They
and
basically said
at
any
the
Australian
time.
who doesn't vote for this is stupid.
That's
It was
right.
their own Trumpian
They were making the
kind
assumption.
of
Ray Martin, I
the
believe,
Hillary
was
Clinton
talking
moment.
about that.
We
Yeah.
are so right. Anyone who disagrees with this has got to be stupid. Now, that's a really unhealthy... And it tells us what was going to be built into the Voice. The Voice was, we're not in favour of democracy because we think you're all stupid. The misinformation bill is, we're not in favour of democracy because we think you're all stupid. Australians are not stupid. Australians are very smart, and we pick up... Just ordinary Aussies are smart enough with loads and loads of common sense to pick up when they're being disrespected and treated with contempt, which both the misinformation bill did and the Yes campaign did.
Too right, Kel. I agree 100%. So a year since the day that most of us decided, no, we actually don't like being abused. We don't like being told that we're stupid and racist. Go figure.